It's springtime. People are in the streets, in the parks, carefree. And yet, behind the scenes, the climate is becoming more and more unstable. A large part of the planet could become uninhabitable by the end of this century. Sometimes I want to scream. For more than 15 years, I've been trying to make a difference. Films, books, protests, the Citizens' Climate Conference.
It's time for politicians to do their job.
I've even helped take the French state to court.
I call on everyone to go to the website for the case of the century to keep signing.
Gradually, I've come to understand what we'll need to achieve in order to face the greatest challenge humanity has ever known. Now is the time to make a plan that will change everything. The sixth report from the IPCC leaves no doubt as to the profound climate-related destruction we're beginning to face. The effects of global warming have become widespread and often irreversible. For years, we convinced ourselves we'd act in time to stop any climate instability without changing our societal models. But now we must learn to adapt to new living conditions. Today, we must face facts. We have already exceeded certain limits that would have kept us from harm. There is too much carbon in the atmosphere, too much pollution in the rivers, too much plastic in the oceans. Entire species are disappearing at incredible rates, and we're already experiencing the consequences of all these things: droughts, fires, flooding, lower crop yields. In the longer term, some fear the collapse of our societies, that the day will come when governments can no longer provide essential services and resources to their citizens. Is this collapse truly unavoidable? Certain people have been preparing for such a moment for many years, including millionaire ex-Silicon Valley executives. They make up a new type of survivalist group known as preppers in the US. John, an ex-aide to Barack Obama, is one of them.
My name is John Ramey, and in the last few years, I've done a lot of work with governments around the world, universities, NGOs, so I got involved with people like the White House and Pentagon on solving some of the big problems that we face. I developed this opinion that not only are we facing big problems, we don't have the ability to fix them. Or more specifically, we could fix these problems, but the way that the systems work, the way that things work in the world, governments work in the world, societies work, we're just not going to get there. Scientists are pulling their hair out, screaming about climate change, and the US Congress still debates whether or not it's even happening. Instead of arguing about whether or not climate change is happening, let's just use the data. After those experiences, I walked away pessimistic. So when thinking about what's going to happen, what do the next few decades look like? We're not talking necessarily about total collapse or an end-of-the-world doomsday situation. I'm cautiously optimistic that humanity will survive. It's just going to have to look different. We're going to have to change. We know more about the world and how it works and what's important than the people who created the system and the rules that we are bound by. And it's that Silicon Valley spirit to say, F the rules, that sucks, I don't like that, I'm gonna do it better. And it's that same kind of spirit combined with the skill of being problem solvers, understanding how to solve big systemic problems. You put that spirit and those skills together, and that's why a lot of Silicon Valley people are preppers. And that directly contradicts this kind of image that, right, prepping is only for people that quit society and move into the woods and are forest hermits and kind of crazy conspiracy theorists. Right? These are extremely intelligent, rational people, and we should be listening to them.
Today, John runs an internet site called The Prepared. It's a survivalist forum estimated at $600 million.
A mistake that people make when thinking about self-reliance and preparedness is they get focused on one specific disaster. But really, it could be anything. A big part of what we do at The Prepared is testing gear, seeing what makes sense. Does it fit in a closet? Is it quality? Is it going to break when you need it? One of the most basic things that anyone should do is to have some water stored at home. Having some water that you know you can drink at least for a few weeks is critical. And there are great products like this that make it easy. If you had to evacuate and you were collecting water from a lake, all you'd have to do is drop this into the water, pump, and it will clean the water for you in real time. But in your home, we strongly recommend this kind of countertop gravity filter. It's just a water filter. You put dirty water in up top, it runs through a filter passively using gravity, comes down here, and then you can fill it up. Lasts a long time. You can clean the filters yourself. If you had a couple extra filters on hand and kept them in a closet, this would be enough to give you and your family clean water for years. What about food? Somebody starting off might buy one of these 2-week food kits. As people want to go further than having 2 or 4 weeks worth of food, maybe you want to have 6 months worth of food, they might move past those meal kits and start to get individual ingredients. You know, carrots, rice, hash browns, berries. They're kind of tasty, pretty nutritious. A lot of these will, again, last 20 to 30 years. We're here in the American West. Where we are right here was only settled 170 years ago. And they were totally isolated. There was no ambulance, there was no police force, right? The Old West with shootouts, right? So this idea that if you want to survive, it's up to you, is something that is still kind of fresh in the American psyche. There is more of the individualism in the American culture of self-reliance and preparedness.
John seems ready to face any catastrophe imaginable, any kind of collapse, whether economic, social, climate-related, or political. And he's not alone. Reid Hoffman, ex-executive chairman of LinkedIn, estimates that nearly 50% of Silicon Valley's senior executives have a plan to keep them out of harm's way. But is there really a basis for any of this? And if so, at what point is it going to happen? A study done in the 1970s by a group of scientists from the prestigious research university MIT came up with several computer-generated models which represent the planet, its resources, its limits, and the different human impact scenarios to the point of system collapse.
This is the first U.S. presentation of an 18-month study of global limits to growth, sponsored by the Club of Rome with Volkswagen Foundation funding, by an international team of 17 scientists at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology under the direction of Dr. Dennis L. Meadows.
During the last year, a group of us at MIT, the principal members of which are with me here today, have been looking at the exponential growth of our global social and economic system. We've been led to 5 basic conclusions. There are physical limits to growth, which, given current trends, are very likely to be encountered even during the lifetime of our children.
In the year 2000 and again in 2014, Graham Turner, emeritus professor and physicist at the University of Melbourne, compared the predictions of the Meadows report with what really happened. And the results are horrifying.
The Meadows team found that the model was showing a collapse in the economy and human population in the early decades of this century. It became clear from their work that there were more problems going to happen in the 21st century. So what we're seeing on the screen is, first of all, the output from the limits to growth model in their business as usual scenario. So we see things to do with the environment, like resources and pollution, and curves to do with the economy, like industrial output per capita, services, food per person, and then finally some of the output from the model on the population. In the dashed lines we see the actual scenarios, and we can see that the economy in the dashed curves starts to peak around these sort of decades, and that the population reaches a peak and then undergoes a long decline from about the 2030s. It became very clear that we certainly weren't on the stabilised world scenario. We were not on that sustainable trajectory. And what was also pretty clear was that the data aligned surprisingly well, not exactly, but surprisingly well with the business as usual scenario. So that seemed to indicate that, oh, well, perhaps we're on this sort of overshoot and collapse trajectory. It's a little bit like having a balloon that you're continuing to blow up, but you don't want it to burst. So at the same time, you're squeezing the balloon in and you continue to blow it, well, it'll expand out in another direction. And you continue to do that, and eventually the balloon bursts. So that's what they found in those series of scenarios.
Of course, it's absolutely not a certainty that the population and economy will collapse starting from 2030. But the accuracy of the Meadows report's business as usual scenario predictions so far should be enough to worry us.
Reason to leave our desk jobs and come to live in the country and try and be a bit more self-sufficient was driven by the research findings. Being self-sufficient is going to be a terribly important component. I think there's an issue of scale here. So if we just think of households alone, that kind of leads you to the simple prepper sort of idea where you're hoarding tin cans and ammunition. And I just don't see that as having any sort of viability. So I think what that points to is the importance of local community, and that local community is self-sufficient.
The likelihood that you face an emergency where being on your own is an advantage is very, very, very small. The vast majority of circumstances, whether it's a specific event like a natural disaster or a slow decline over the next few decades as our economy falls apart, you are more likely to thrive with community. And again, history proves this. During the Great Depression 90 years ago, the places that the cities and towns that did better were the places that helped each other, that had more of a sense of community, where people would barter, they'd exchange skills. One person would grow one crop and another person would grow a different crop, and they'd help each other. Community works, but it doesn't work if all the individual pieces are panicking and falling apart.
We must adapt to survive, but survive what exactly? And how do we become more self-sufficient? I asked to meet with Pablo Servin, Doctor of Biology and collapsology figurehead. He's behind the origins of the concept, along with researcher Raphael Stevens. Together, they wrote the seminal work, How Everything Can Collapse. What did you mean when you said everything can collapse?
What we meant was that all systems are capable of collapse. whether it be the economy, the stock market, an ecosystem, or a political system. Scientists say the Earth system, the biosphere, could collapse, leading to us losing control of everything and creating a snowball effect as a result of which everything collapses even more quickly than anticipated. The worst thing is that this is already happening. So in fact, there are two kinds of collapse scenario. Fact-based, which scientists have already studied, concerning the animal kingdom, bird, insect, mollusk populations. It's very alarming. And then there's also everything that could still happen, which science can try to predict, but cannot say with certainty will take place, of course. So we will always be haunted by a certain level of uncertainty, but we can still act. Philosopher Jean-Pierre Dupuis said so when he came up with a philosophical theory which he calls enlightened doomsdaying. He suggests that though this future level of catastrophe may be uncertain, and it is indeed uncertain, we should simply consider it as certain in order to better avoid it. If we see the wall in front of us, we stand a better chance of turning around. I believe collapsology is the first step towards taking action. It's about understanding what we can do and what leverage we have. It's the great paradox. The more action we take now, the fewer things will happen. You see?
As Jean-Pierre Dupuis says, right now we don't believe what we know.
Exactly.
And if you transpose that to the issue of climate change, how we prepare for that, what are the drills we can practice in terms of climate change risks?
The problem with climate change is that it's global and affects every area. It affects farming, which means it affects food production, water, the economy. It affects supply chains, supermarkets. It affects so many things in our lives that we need to reevaluate everything. I think the key solution lies within current life systems. They've been around for 4 billion years. They have 4 billion years of experience in research and development, in sustainability and resilience. They hold the key. And so if we can take inspiration from them, whether for our economy, heating our homes, building our homes, our transport systems, whatever, for living, for organizing ourselves, I think we stand to learn a lot.
Many cities have decided to take inspiration from the life systems Pablo Servine mentions in order to become more self-sufficient, like Cape Town in South Africa, which has found a way to protect its water resources. At the very tip of the African continent, where rain is a rare occurrence and there are many droughts, a surprising natural phenomenon waters the earth, a river in the sky.
Here we are about 1,300 meters above sea level, and you get often cloud which forms over that mountain and releasing water. It's like a fog mist. And the beauty of that is that the fynbos and the almost undisturbed mountain range absorbs that water like a sponge. And so even though you might have days of no actual rainfall falling, you do get an absorption of water which slowly infiltrates through the roots of those plants and feeds the groundwater. And some of that would find its way into the rivers and feed the system over here.
This water is collected in lakes and dams which act as water reserves for the city's population. But in 2018, after several years of unusually long drought, this huge city found itself close to a form of collapse. Day zero. The day the taps would run dry. World-renowned biologist Dr. Kevin Winter is a specialist on water provision and was one of the people who helped the city avoid this catastrophe.
If I took you to 2018, you could have walked almost right across this expanse of water that you see behind me. There was a moment of panic. Day zero for everyone meant absolutely no water at all. And you can imagine if we had a city of 4.5 million queuing up for water, it would have been absolute chaos.
Faced with such an emergency, the municipality immediately imposed taxes and strict rationing. since 2018, water consumption has declined by 60%.
We went from consuming around 1.2 billion litres of water per day to just under 500 million litres of water per day. And I think the reason why Cape Town was so successful in being able to reduce its consumption in such a short period of time was because there was collective action and there was immediate response and collaboration and effort from everyone. What is truly amazing is that we see water consumption still very low. We've lifted the drought restrictions just over a year ago, but water consumption remains low and stable. And this is an indication of a permanent adaptation and behavior change and renewed relationship that Cape Town residents have with water. And that will build a strong future and foundation for us to be far more resilient to any future drought risks.
But Kevin Winter goes even further. In order to save every drop, he uses an old wastewater treatment plant to recycle contaminated water without using any chemicals, to provide drinking water to as many people as possible in an eco-friendly way, including the destitute.
What we've been doing here is trying to understand how nature functions, what kind of processes can we understand about nature, and to go back to those natural processes to start treating water without adding more chemicals, without adding more energy, and having as minimal as possible maintenance and operations required to run the system.
The sewer that runs from the township and round the side of the mountain has created a particularly polluted river because there is no infrastructure.
The water that is in the river that we are treating is water which is very high in nutrients, phosphates, potassium, nitrogen, ammonia, nitrogen. And we've been taking samples of this river, which gives us tests for drugs, antiretroviral drugs that we find in here as well. Water comes into that tank there, it settles down some of the organics in that water, and then it flows by hydraulic pressure into the next tank, and then it goes into a cell with peach pips in it, and then it goes into small stones here. This is where there's a diversity of cells and microbes that are doing the work of cleaning the water. Remember, this is all nature-based. We're not doing anything else with it. It's nature that is doing this job.
What Cape Town has experienced could very soon happen in other places around the world. We must prepare for that. And it's not only a question of water provision. In Cuba, it was food supplies that were affected when the Soviet Union collapsed at the beginning of the 1990s. Emergency action was required on a countrywide level in order to save 11 million people from famine and set up what are known here as organoponicos, urban farms which were established in cities wherever the smallest bit of land was available.
We lived in a country that relied on international imports. Nearly 90% of our food came from the socialists. We produced and exported sugar to the Soviet Union, and in return they sent us the food we needed. The fall of the USSR meant we had little food coming in, and so we had to start growing things we'd never grown ourselves before. There's no oil in Cuba. Our research institutes study the challenge of how to produce food without fuel, without treatment processes or fertilizer. We had to go with an organic production model out of necessity, not conviction. Either we grew organic or we died of hunger. Today we have 14 hectares. My father was one of the 5 founders. He said they started out Robinson Crusoe style, and now we have nearly 150 gardeners. We produce around 400 tons of vegetables a year. They're mostly leaf vegetables like chard and lettuce, which are our main crops. My father says lettuce is more profitable than marijuana. We don't grow marijuana, but lettuce production is extremely quick and you get an excellent yield. It's a farming model with low input levels and very low costs too. Our workers are therefore paid well. Their size would suggest they've got good strong roots and they're easy to pick too. Even the ones on the edge. That's what I'm saying. You have to work hard. It's not like farming with chemicals, where when there's a problem, a blight of some kind, you can apply the right chemical product and get the situation under control. No, here, you have to be extremely careful and prevent it from happening before the veg has even come out of the ground. We use hedges and corn as well. These living barriers are perfect insect hotels. When you plant corn around a crop, instead of heading straight for the crop, insects go for the corn. Here, for example, is where we grow vetiver, basil, oregano, calendula. They're plants that help keep the insect population under control and also increase biodiversity. What a shame there's no more purple basil.
Know what else I planted today?
What?
Lemon basil.
Ah, great.
You're happy with that?
Yes. What's grown on an organoponico is mainly for the community. 70% of our produce goes to them and 30% to the tourist sector, hotels, cafes or other companies that come and get their vegetables. Our produce may be organic, but it doesn't have the same value as in other countries. Prices are low and community-oriented because we, the workers, are part of the community. My aim is for people to have access to fresh, healthy vegetables at a very good price. Cubans don't eat many vegetables. A typical Cuban meal is a lot of rice, beans, meat, and perhaps a token vegetable. I think we're making progress in the sense that we're starting to eat more vegetables, green vegetables, and others that we didn't know about before. We're also starting to develop a healthier mentality in terms of community-mindedness and the environment.
In Cuba, urban farming has developed faster than anywhere else in the world. The island has nearly 400,000 urban farms covering 70,000 hectares of land that until now was unused and produces 1.5 million tons of vegetables. Today, Havana is even able to provide 50% of organic fruit and vegetables to its 2.2 million inhabitants, with the rest coming from cooperatives on the outskirts of the city.
Establishing self-sufficient food supply chains might seem like it would make a big difference, but it's what helped the island survive Hurricane Maria in 2017. Compared with its neighbor, Puerto Rico, which imports 85% of its food and also imports 98% of the fossil fuels it needs to produce electricity. It experienced considerable damage, including the deaths of between 3,000 and 5,000 people, not as a direct result of the extreme weather events, but because the hospitals ran out of electricity. People no longer had access to food, and the island depended totally on imports for its survival. So being independent for your energy requirements, as Cuba is now independent for its food requirements, is a key factor in being able to survive the extreme climate events which await us.
Bangladesh is the country most at threat from climate change and rising water levels. If global warming continues at its current pace, much of Bangladesh will become submerged, and tens of millions of people will need to find new homes. In this country of 157 million inhabitants, which is one of the poorest in the world, access to electricity is often basic. 17 million homes, mainly in rural locations, are not on the national grid. Led by its founder, Runa Khan, the NGO Friendship aims to bring light and brand new solar panels to these areas.
Disaster happens in these regions constantly, and more with the environmental changes that are happening, the climate changes and crises which are happening. The islands keep shifting, the rivers keep shifting, the land keeps shifting, the houses keep shifting. How can you have stable electricity? The only alternate to that is actually solar power. So it's extremely important for people to be able to depend on themselves.
Thanks to solar energy, when I come home, I can study in the evening and work properly. When I go to school the next day, I can talk to my friends. Now I love studying. Before, I couldn't study in the evenings and my teacher was not happy. But he never complains now, and he likes us. I want to finish my studies and become a teacher. Today, girls are made to marry when they are very young, which is why they have such great difficulties. It's very hard for them. I don't want to marry young because I could have the same problems. That's why I want to become a teacher and educate other girls in the area.
Women are 50% of the other half. Their responsibility is transformative. And women work, with compassion, deep empathy, commitment, and they make changes happen because of this.
To date, 7,500 systems have been installed. 243 villages now have access to electricity.
If there has been a single issue in the lives of these communities, these climate migrants, it has been child marriage. Every time they lose their homes, they become poorer. And what happens? What they want to do is safety and security for the children. If you have a daughter who's already 9 or 10, she needs to be immediately given in marriage and made somebody else's responsibility. Children who have the luck of going to school, of being able to have an education, their parents find hope that if the child is educated, they can marry off to a good family and not an old man old enough to be her grandfather. So schooling is one of the most important fight that we do for ensuring that child marriage does not happen. If Bangladesh has got one fight against climate change, that fight has to be demography. And light does have a direct impact. Higher education leads to self-confidence, leads to knowledge, leads to knowing that you should not have more than the number of children you can take care of, which is certainly not more than 2. And therefore, one of the most critical factors of contribution of Bangladesh to climate change, which is demography, can be addressed directly by bringing light to remote communities.
Being able to deal with food and energy crises is also on the agenda for those of us living in the West, where centralized energy networks are equally fragile. Were they to fail, our societies would soon become overwhelmed and powerless.
In the Austrian Alps, terrible avalanches have devastated villages, bringing death and ruin to the area.
In the winter of 1954, there were close to 200 victims. The event was a total shock to the whole country and made the population of Vorarlberg understand the level of human responsibility for the avalanche. They'd cut down so many trees that there was nothing to hold back the ground or the snow. This natural catastrophe led to the whole region rethinking how it should manage its forests, as architect Hermann Kaufmann explains. He uses wood as a key material for building eco-friendly buildings.
We started to look after the forests again. And you can only look after a forest if the material it produces retains its value, i.e., brings in money. This is why we realized that in parallel, we would need to use the wood as a construction material, as has always been the case here. I think it's a material that's very versatile, which makes it very eco-friendly. It smells nice, and it's beautiful. And of course now, people want to build in a way that is respectful of the climate and the environment, which makes this wood the ideal construction material. This building is therefore a very good example of how you can use local resources for both construction and heating projects. It's a low-energy building which produces very low levels of CO2. Its construction, therefore, also produced low levels of greenhouse gases, and using the building produces equally low amounts.
Daraus ist das Energieinstitut entstanden und seit 1985 beraten, bilden und forschen wir für sinnvollen Energieeinsatz und erneuerbare Energieträger. Wichtig war da der Aufbau des Energieberaternetzwerkes, flächendeckend in ganz Vorarlberg, eine produktneutrale Beratung, bürgernah, kostenlos für alle Bürger und Bürgerinnen. Auch wichtig war die Entwicklung des Vorarlberger Energiesparhauses, ein Label für Niedrigenergiehäuser. Das heißt, Ausbau bedeutet Photovoltaik, Solaranlagen, Wind und Biomasse. Ja, die Energieautonomie Vorarlberg hat zum Ziel, die Unabhängigkeit und die Umweltverträglichkeit und die Leistbarkeit eines Energieversorgungssystems zu implementieren bis 2050.
Thanks to its four-point strategy, moderation, energy efficiency, renewable energies, and research and development, Vorarlberg has become one of the most self-sufficient areas in Europe. The aim is to be 100% energy independent by 2050, using only renewable resources. They've almost reached that goal already, with wind, solar, hydroelectric, and biomass making up 93% of their energy solution. It was all made possible thanks to the successful cooperation between all the agents involved. It's a level of cooperation which requires a new understanding of the meaning of community. It's something the inhabitants of the Wohn project in Vienna have also achieved, a few hundred kilometers from Vorarlberg. Completed in 2014, this wooden building, which contains 39 apartments, is one of the most successful examples of a cohabitat. The Wohn project is inventing a new way to socially connect at the heart of the Austrian capital, whilst also offering a living space which prioritizes eco-friendly solutions and its inhabitants' well-being.
My name is Barbara, and I've been part of the cohabitation project in Vienna since 2011. One of the main principles of cohabitation is to prioritize a sustainable way of life. We designed the building with a maximum number of infrastructures to help us achieve this objective. For example, we have included spaces in the basement for a food cooperative. It's run by a small association which you can join and which works with local farmers in the area. You can order things and there are regular deliveries. We also have 2 cargo bikes for transporting children or shopping, whatever's needed. There's also a kitchen garden where you can plant vegetables. We have fruit trees, cherries, apples, medlars, which are very popular. Everyone helps themselves when the fruit is ripe.
I've always thought it was great for children in the city to be able to connect with the earth.
Speziell im Frühjahr, oder? Also ich gärtner so gerne im Frühjahr. Aber weißt du, was auch gut ist? Dass wir jetzt eben seit 2 Jahren Bienen haben und dass die Bienen eben unsere Obstbäume befruchten. Das stimmt.
Yes, I think if we leave that grassy area as it is, the one at the back there, our bees will love it.
Und so ein kleines Glas Honig schaut auch noch raus dabei. Ja, genau.
The way the Wohn project system works benefits the entire community. Those who live there take it in turns to look after the beehives on the roof, the community cafe and bakery. They each have their own apartment, and there's a shared games room, a DIY workshop, a yoga studio, several courtyards, a library, a utility room and dozens of bicycles.
I love it because the neighbours are really nice. We're like one big family. We help each other out. The children born into this community don't know any different. People's doors are open most of the time. You can go ring the bell if you need something. The children often go to each other's apartments to play together. It's very handy. We organise different activities within the building, like a shared dinner twice a week. It's organised between different families on a rota. One family cooks, the others add their names to the list if they're coming, and everyone participates financially to the tune of €2. It's a nice thing to do. You cook once, and the next few weeks you get to simply share a meal without having to do anything.
Barbara und ich kochen gerade für ein gemeinsames Abendessen. Es kommen so ungefähr 25 Leute jetzt. Und ja, die Gemeinschaftsküche ist wahrscheinlich so unser wichtigster Gemeinschaftsraum und unser wichtigster Ort in dem Haus. Also wir sind ziemlich genau 100 Menschen, die in diesem Haus leben und eine Art von Gemeinschaft oder gelebter Nachbarschaft leben. Und wir sind eben vor ziemlich genau 10 Jahren gestartet, so mit dieser Vision, die im Prinzip aus 3 Punkten bestanden hat. Das ist eine Keimzelle der Nachhaltigkeit sein, Individualität in Gemeinschaft leben und kommunikative Räume schaffen.
True to their original shared community vision, they've welcomed in a Syrian refugee family who escaped the war.
So when do you cook for us, Ahmad?
Yeah, when we moved to the new flat.
New flat is in the second floor. Okay.
Yeah, second floor. In the first day, we sleep in the room. When we wake up, we go to the guest kitchen, and we find food in the table.
Really?
Yeah, wow. and we don't know from who this food. It was like, we feel like we back to our house family. The issue is, Barbara, I don't have family here.
Yeah.
So I like to stay in this house till I die. The reason, because whenever I have a problem, whenever something happened to me, I know my children, my wife is on safe place, safe house. Because everybody will look after my children or my wife.
We're well organised. What I mean is all the tasks are shared out equally, because of course this building is self-governed. We've organised ourselves into a sort of sociocracy. All of the jobs are shared out among different work groups. Each person living in the building is part of a work group. Right now we have 6 groups: financial, social, even a communication group. It means each group can make decisions. And that way decisions get made a lot faster. It's more efficient. A sociocracy is not about seeking permission from every single person, but making decisions which work for everyone.
In big cities, sharing and community might be the best way to soften the blows linked to climate change. But today we live lives which are in complete opposition to that goal. Everything is geared towards individualism, producing and consuming on a loop, increasing profits and growing the economy indefinitely. Building moderate, self-sufficient, tenable societies which are agreeable to live in would be a real Copernican revolution.
The only animal that can combine the two abilities together and cooperate both flexibly and still do so in very large numbers is us, Homo sapiens. We can cooperate flexibly with countless numbers of strangers because we alone, of all the animals on the planet, can create and believe fictions, fictional stories. And as long as everybody believes in the same fiction, everybody obeys and follows the same rules, the same norms, the same values.
As Yuval Harari, historian, philosopher, and author of bestseller *Sapiens* says, in order for our societies to change, we need new stories which are capable of captivating hundreds of millions of people and inspiring new values, new rules which respect the limits of the planet.
Long live our country! Long live Uruguay! Long live Latin America!
Ex-revolutionary and ex-farmer José Alberto Mujica Cordano, known as Pepe Mujica, is without doubt one of the most unusual presidents to have been in office. During his 2010 to 2050 presidency, he gave away 90% of his salary to associations and wouldn't hear of a palace residence or a private car. He continued to drive his old Beetle and to live on his farm. He still does today.
As children of a certain period, we dreamed of eradicating the world divide between rich and poor. It was a dream of social justice, of equality. When you start to change the whole world, you have to pay the consequences. And that's what happened. It was a time when Cold War policies were so influenced by the policies and interests of the United States that the only solution to the problems of a divided country was a coup d'etat. And just like many others involved in revolutionary movements at the time, we were imprisoned for our actions. I spent nearly 7 years in prison without reading a single book. I was allowed 2 or 3 visits a year, close friends, my mother. I had no idea what was going on in the world. I began to understand the importance of the tiny details of everyday life, because I was no longer experiencing them myself. I began to confer immeasurable value on every form of life. I think we're prisoners of a subliminal culture which has created a capitalist need to accumulate, which makes us blind consumerists. The need to accumulate dictates that happiness is about constantly buying new things, even if we remain indebted our entire lives and have to keep working and working and working until the difference between being happy and having becomes blurred. The difference between being and having. I think that modesty in life guarantees your freedom. Because when you buy new things, you don't buy them with your money. You buy them with the time you've spent to get that money. Man has never had as many resources available to him as he does now. But this way of life is an attack on nature. We produce too much useless waste. We pointlessly pollute, and we consume too many useless things. There's a small group of extremely rich people, roughly 100 or so, who have just as much as half of the rest of humanity combined. That's why civilization is in crisis, and why the climate crisis is also a political crisis. We are not equal to the task of making the decisions that we're faced with. What do I tell young people? Get organized and fight. We need to build collective action groups with people who share the same ideas. We need to unite and fight for a better world.
How will we plan for our economies and societies to function in the stories of our future? The possibility of a violent system collapse is forcing us to build a new civilization, to invent a new model where our activities on a global scale will no longer be destructive, but regenerative. It's not about polluting less or preparing for catastrophes. It's about reinventing everything.